Well, hello out there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. I'm so happy to have you here. We're so happy to have you here. I'm Annette Richmond. This is the Smarter Career Moves LinkedIn Live show. Please say hello and let us know where you are joining us from. Christopher, as we spoke briefly, I met you, I think, about a year ago at one of Brenda Meller's Friday morning VIP sessions. And you were sharing so much LinkedIn knowledge and video knowledge and things like that. But we want to talk about other things today. I'm so excited to have you with me. Can you just introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Happily. Thanks for having me. Christopher Johnson. I am a virtual event producer and fill-in radio host. So I help executives produce virtual events for clients that range from conferences to meetings to speakers and performers that produce events for like a town hall or a training session or something of that nature. I take care of the tech so they can focus on the message.
Okay. So, I have been reading a lot about events.
Mhm.
Everything is obviously was virtual for 2 years. We just started getting back in person. I went to my first in-person conference in September and am actually, I don't know, half excited and half nervous about attending a holiday event in a couple of weeks. So it's sort of an interesting industry event. And so I'm curious to hear where you think things are going sort of in 2023. I have read that in person is back, and budgets are up. But what do you think?
I think virtual events are here to stay, primarily because the it opens it up to a whole variety of people. Some of the international events I've done, their registration, their attendance went up markedly because people from around the world were able to attend without the cost of travel.
Yeah, I think that too. When I was going to, I went to a few virtual conferences and one recent sort of a hybrid conference, and it's so much more convenient. If you go to a conference, you're often able to, watch the sessions at your leisure. I recently attended the PA Women's Conference, and actually, what I thought was interesting, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. A lot of the breakout, which was, the virtual sessions were recorded. And so they had, if I was speaking, it would be a recording of me for, say, 20 minutes, giving whatever my presentation was. And then they had the speakers join live for like a 15-minute Q&A. And I had never seen that before. Is that something that's common? And what do you think of that?
That is common. It's something that I have done. Sometimes the speakers are in locales where the Wi-Fi is spotty. Their internet connection might be a little bit wonky, and
Okay.
or they might be nervous and they want to record it sometimes as a just in case. Just in case, let's have a recording and
Mhm.
they can practice the recording.
It's interesting that you should say that because my LinkedIn live shows feed into podcasts. And I have PR people contacting me all the time, oh, Susan would be great for your podcast, da 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 da. And I say, oh, okay, that sounds good. I just want to let you know that my LinkedIn live show is what feeds into the podcast, and I never hear from them again. So, so what do you think that's all about? Is it just people that are nervous about being live? I mean, you are live all the time. I've been live weekly for, over a year, and I don't know. It just seems odd to me that people are nervous about being live.
I I can almost understand it. I mean,
Okay.
there's a fear of public speaking, and With some mediums, the we can fix it in post. Well, there's if it's live, there's no post. You just have to do it extemporaneously and to the best of your ability. Is it always flawless? No. Are we all human? Absolutely.
Yeah, I have read that, and I was going to ask you about that also. The and I read this statistic recently that 75% of people would rather be in the, in the casket than giving the eulogy at a funeral.
That has never made sense to me.
I, I know. So before we segue and I ask you a few other questions,
Mhm.
do you have tips for people? Oh, I'm sure you do. Who are presenting live? Because I would imagine, although you are handling the tech for these events, if you're having someone giving a presentation or giving a training, I would assume that that's live.
Most often it is. And in the cases where it's recorded, I'm usually the person recording it for later broadcast, and that's fine. What I tell people to do is just worry about talking to one person if you're going to worry at all. When it is a one on one recording situation, just explain it to me. When it is a one on hundreds or thousands, who's that one person in the audience that needs to hear this? Talk to them. Everyone else is just being allowed to listen in.
I like that. And I know Jillian, who is a friend of both of ours, she has her little, Lenny that she thinks of as her camera, and she puts a little sticky on there. And I do that. I learned that from her, and I do that myself. I have a little smiley face, right, where I'm supposed to be looking at the camera, and it helps sort of keep me on target. But it's so strange to me that people should be so nervous. And one thing that I heard, and this is many more than a decade ago, when I first started speaking to like job seeker groups at libraries and stuff, and I still do that all the time or virtually, and I was of course nervous, and went to see a presentation by a sort of speaking coach, and she said, nobody cares what you look like. Nobody cares what you sound like. They only care if your message is relevant to them. And I have found, I mean, and that's kind of what you were saying as well, that people get so nervous about it. And um, I'm a bit of a video nag. I'm always pushing people to do video because it is the fastest way to build that, no like and trust factor. Um, but do you have any tips for me on how to get people to make those things like the profile videos that and any tips on technology for that?
The first tip is have fun. So it doesn't matter if you do it in one take or 100 takes. The only one we're going to see is what's posted on your profile. So just have fun. And in terms of video tips, as you were saying earlier, identify where the camera is, be able to look at it. If you need to place something behind it so that you know where to look, so that you are looking at the right area, place a photo of someone you like behind the camera.
Yeah. I always think of that. They say if you're having your picture taken to have someone, and I always think of my dogs because they are they are the brightest spot, because they never ever disappoint. But um I I wanted to so we're talking about events and the virtual events. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that event either planners or producers make?
One of the biggest mistakes is just winging it. It's just Zoom. I can figure it out. Gee, hmm. Wait, how does that work? So not having a thorough plan beforehand. Addition, in addition, wanting to use a function or feature because it's available. Let's do breakout rooms. We'll send 5 people into a room for 1 minute and we'll get them to know each other. No. What's the purpose in going into a breakout room? What are the instructions? So people need to know what to do and how to do before you send them off to do it. There should be a purpose to every function or feature that you put into your virtual event.
I like that. It's funny you should say that because I host for an organization that I'm with. Sort of these we do monthly. It's sort of like speed dating, and we do that. We put people in breakout rooms, like two people, and the reason for that is that I had people tell me at a conference when we did that people who are introverted find it much easier if they're one on one with someone than if they're in a group. And I have found that to be true as well. If you have like four people there, two people are talking and the other two people are just sitting there. But what I wanted to say is when we put them in the breakout rooms and there were people who were new to the event, they're messaging me, what are we supposed to do here?
Yeah, the instructions need to be given and demonstrated before sending people off to breakout rooms. Here's what you're going to talk about. Here's my answer. Now go and discuss it amongst yourselves. And when we come back, we'll talk about the answers you all came up with.
And what would you say on the flip side are some of the things that work most effectively with virtual? Because there is one thing about in person, you do have that in person, part. But what would you say are some things that are, most effective if you are planning at a virtual event?
It's really easy to be inclusive. So things like turning on captions, having having a chat that is active and being managed and maintained so that you can place something in the chat, you can distribute information, you can collect information, being present and being attuned to the audience. You can have, hey, let's get a show of hands, and you can have people either raise their hand or raise the reaction button and engage that way. So there are a variety of ways to keep people engaged and included as opposed to excluded from the activities.
Okay. That makes sense to me. So I want to ask you also because you are also a voiceover artist and radio host, and that is not surprising. I mean, your voices. I was reading about how they talk about voices, and they call it melodic. I think is your voice, right? I mean, it's just lovely to
Thank
listen
you.
to. So how did you get into that?
Well, radio is something I've always been fascinated with, in love with. And when in, let's see, my undergrad degree is actually in broadcast communications. So an opportunity to work in my local public radio station came up, and of course, I signed up. In terms of voiceover, it's also been something that I've been interested in. I listen to a ton of audiobooks. If there's an opportunity to audition for an audiobook, yes, I go for the audition. And hey, sometimes it has been successful. Sometimes, it's like, I understand why they went with that person. I know what I need to work on.
Well, see, I didn't even know that. So people, because I was thinking of the people that I know and the authors that I see, like Brenda, who we both know, she recorded her own audio book. So is that common for people to? I guess it is to have other people do the voice for their book.
It is, but here's my caveat. I think the author is, in most cases, or in a lot of cases, the best person to tell that story. If you are if it is a nonfiction book and you're explaining to people why and what for and this process, the best person to explain that is probably the author because they can convey that story. Now, for
Mhm.
whatever reason, some people choose not to, they don't want to, they have, instead of stage fright, mic fright. And that's fine. I'm happy to voice their story. Um, but yeah, authors, I like it when authors tell their own story.
Well, that makes sense because also I would think that that they have the the excitement. If they're doing a book, they have the excitement about the topic that you may not.
Exactly. But see, that's the job when you're voicing somebody else's words. It's
Hmm.
your job to find that excitement, find that narrative, to draw people in close and make them, what's going to happen next? And so when you can do that, it's wonderful.
It's so difficult, and I've talked to other people in communication, and one of the things that I often think of is we grow up learning to speak. I mean, our parents teach us how to talk, and I think when people think about communication and improving their communication, being more effective, they think of writing because they feel like everybody thinks they have a sense of humor. Well, I think people for the most part think that they're fairly effective communicators, and I think most of us are not. So I have sort of a twofold question for you. How to just generally be better communicators, and then how to make our voice, more effective as well.
My answer would be right for the ear. So, written language, there can be a big disconnect between how you read something and how you hear something. If one sentence is a whole paragraph,
Mm.
you're not going to be able to say that in one breath.
Hmm.
Saying it in one breath, saying it concisely, getting your point across, that should be the objective. And if you read aloud what you write, how does it sound? Are you still getting your message across? Are people understanding what your intent is?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty good at writing my voice. My undergrad was in English with a concentration in writing. I was a magazine writer before I got into the career field, and obviously that was more formal writing. But I write pretty much the way I speak, and I'll say "gonna" if I'm writing as I would if I'm speaking, because it's kind of me, and I find that's more effective for me. Of course, depends on what I'm writing. If I'm writing an article for, I'm going to submit someplace, then I have to, raise it up a little bit. But what about the voice? Because I hate the sound of my voice. It sounds just, and I mean, does everybody hate the sound of their voice? But how can we like it better or make it better?
You know, it's one of those things you just have to get used to it. Even when I'm working on things I've recorded, it's not one of those, wow, listen to how I said that. No, it's like, all right, let's just get this editing job done.
Well, since you do a lot of speaking, you're on radio, and I'm going to ask you something that about, and also Toastmasters. You belong to Toastmasters, right? You, or you did?
I
Not.
did. Toastmasters is actually where I met Brenda Miller and so many other people that we have in common. Toastmasters, they have a really good foundation on how to help people improve their speaking.
And so was that something that you would recommend for anyone just to, be better or be more comfortable? Or what would you say is the biggest sort of advantage? Is it just getting people to be comfortable, or build on that as well?
I think it is. I was under a misconception when I joined Toastmasters. I heard about it and I thought, wait a second, there's a group for people who really enjoy speaking? Sign me up. And it's like, oh, wait, you all are apprehensive? Okay. It's still fun. I- and wherever you are, if your desire to improve if your desire is to improve, Toastmasters can help you do that. So I heartily recommend them.
Yeah, I did have one person recently, and I forget who it was. Someone we know, I'm sure, but I just can't remember which person told me this. Is told me that even if you're comfortable speaking, which I feel like I'm pretty comfortable. I'm not great, but I'm comfortable. It's a good place to sort of try out your material.
It is. Toastmasters can help you organize the presentation. How are you getting your points across? Well, let's maybe change the order because your strongest point should be your last point as
Hmm.
opposed to your first point. And they help you build your presentation in that way or build the outline of your speakings, your talks.
So, speaking of a mutual friend who we were talking about earlier, hello, Jillian. Thank you so much for joining us from Las Vegas. I know it's a little early there for you, but so happy to have you here. And we were talking about you earlier. So, you'll have to go back and watch the replay because I'm not going to tell you what we said, but it was all good.
Absolutely.
So, when it one of the things that I like to ask people is, what do you enjoy most about what you do?
What I enjoy most is the satisfaction of helping people. So, with virtual events, for instance,
Hmm.
some people have that same fear about public speaking. They have it with technology as well. And it can be contagious. The stress can be contagious. In a virtual environment like that, what you shouldn't have is somebody who's just going to say, it's under control. Here's what we're going to do. I fixed the problem. Please continue. So it is the helping someone move past where they are to where they want to be, whether that is solving their tech issue or um, helping them understand something. I like helping people.
So I would imagine that you would recommend having sort of a checklist or something in advance.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, and at the top of it, be there early. If your virtual event starts at noon, don't show up at 11:59. It's your event. You should be on early and make sure that, hey, how does the mic sound? Is it, working correctly? Does my camera still work? Do I need to reboot? Has there been an update to the software? Where where's my presentation? How am I going to share that? Answer all those questions before the event starts.
I'm looking over because I see hearts. People are loving what you're saying as I'm looking over and seeing the recording. Um, yeah, I always ask people, and thank you for being, early, to meet me a little bit early. And every once in a while, I have people that come bopping in like a minute before, and it always, I mean, I'm comfortable being on live, and I've had disasters. The worst one ever was when Brenda was my guest. Thank goodness, where I somehow remove myself not only from the live but from my desktop, and I could hear her, and she was just carrying on like like everything was fine, and she started talking like it was her show, until I finally figured out, maybe 10 minutes later, how to go back in. But and you do get accustomed to those bloopers, but I would imagine if you don't do things as often, that can be sometimes they more need someone like you to help them.
Sure, just take away the stress of having to run that yourself and hire help. And even on something like a LinkedIn Live, you can have somebody as your assistant or producer backstage to make sure things run smoothly.
Ah. Well, yeah, it's like a lot of things. There's so many bells and whistles to do. And when I first started doing, after I've been doing LinkedIn Lives for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and I started in 2021 doing them when you still had to apply and and get granted the feature. That I hired Jillian to come in, and she helped me set up my StreamYard, to look, more professional. So it's always a bonus to hire someone to come and help you.
Mhm.
But as we're getting sort of towards the end of our time together, I have two questions. The first one is, what's something about you that would surprise me and others?
Hmm. Uh, I don't know if it's surprising or not. I'm insatiably curious and I have a growth mindset. So I think that I can always learn something. And that's not only intellectually, but physically as well. So recently, in my 50s, I learned how to swim.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Swimming is my favorite thing now.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm sort of reading a book right now, and the whole sort of the premise, I'm early into it, is that it's so important for us to rethink what we know.
I
That,
agree completely.
we think we know, but if you can keep the idea that, "Oh, I think I know, but maybe I don't," that will be, that will lead to more, success and all of that. So here's Jillian. Yes, arriving 1 minute before the live is stressful. I know she's been there too. Talked about this. I'm sure you've talked about it with her as well. And my last question is, we've talked about a few different things, quite a few different things, but there's always, obviously, I leave something out. What would you like to share that you think is important for people to know, that I haven't asked you, we haven't discussed?
A growth mindset requires curiosity and learning. So I would be curious, what are you reading? So the book you just mentioned, that sounds intriguing. What's the name of it?
Think again.
Yes, Adam Grant.
Yep. Yep.
I am a voracious reader. So the one, my question, what are the people in the audience reading that they would recommend? Because my voracious appetite for reading is inexhaustible.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much. What's the best way for people to reach you?
I am open to connecting on LinkedIn if it is a personal connection, uh, or if it is a connection request that has a note attached. Um, so yes, please connect and let's see how we can help one another.
Well, I thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better. And I hope that you will come back and be on my show again, this one or my evening show. So thank you everyone who has been here with us. I've been seeing some reactions come popping up on my other monitor. So always happy to have people here with us live. So thanks again. And thank you, Christopher, for your time. I'm much appreciated. And everyone else, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.